Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. In recent years, Wordle has taken over Storm and people love that game. Well, after that came out, a logic and deduction game based off that came out called Murdle. And there was a bunch of books that came out. I have the first volume of books. I love it. I used to do logic puzzles in bed as a kid, and now I do them again with Murdles. And so now they came out with a board game. Now in this game, you're going to be investigating and looking for clues and looking through magnifying glass and not really, but you're trying to find the suspect, the weapon, and the location and be the first one to find the guilty party. Today we're taking a look at Murdle, the board game. This is a very close simulation of what you do in the books, but in a competitive board game format. Let me show you how it works. I'll see you on the other side. In the game, you're going to be the first to try to find the guilty suspect, location, and weapon. There's actually 4 of each, but here's just a small subsection of what the art looks like. So you're trying to basically be the first one to solve the crime. So here's the board set up. Now it is set up like a logic puzzle, just like one of the easier versions of the puzzles that are in the Murdle books. And so you're trying to find out the murder using this logic. Now there are going to be 4 case files here, and in each of these is one of the suspects, one of the locations, and one of the weapons. And so if something's in one envelope, it cannot be in one of the other envelopes. Also, there is a V card in here. That is the verdict. 3 of these will be innocent. One of them says guilty. So you're trying to find the suspect, the weapon, location, and the guilty in which one of these and be the first one to do so. Now, at the beginning of the game, everyone gets to have some information. Everyone will take one of these envelopes. You'll flip it over where it says secrets for your eyes only, and you'll look at any 2 of these, not the verdict, any 2 of the normal things, suspect, location, or location. So for example, we might see Vice President Mauve, and we put that back secretly so no one can see it. And you pick out, let's say, the location. Again, you don't want to pull out any of the ones you're not supposed to. And that one right there. So we know that those 2 are together in envelope 1. Now each player gets a player shield. They'll place a deduction sheet behind it so people can't see it. However, these folds are not quite long enough to hide the whole sheet, which I'm not sure why they didn't just do it a different way and make it maybe a different shape or something. Maybe have it laid out this way so it can actually hide the whole thing and make this thing different. Because they want you to basically fold this so it fits like this, but you're constantly looking at stuff here and looking at stuff here. This is bad game design here. You should have been able to see your entire deduction sheet and have it hidden. Now for this reason, I'm just going to take that shield away so you can see everything at once. And so here we write down the 2 things that we saw. We saw it in envelope 1, we saw VP Mauve and New Aegis. Now we know that they're both in this envelope, they're both connected. And so what we do is we find the intersection between those 2 things and we put a check mark. And in normal logic puzzle style, that means none of these can be true and none of these can be true. So everyone will have a different set of starting sections. Again, you're trying to find the 3 things in a specific envelope, and whether then you're trying to find the guilty one. Only one of these envelopes is guilty, the rest are innocent. So on your turn, you basically have 2 choices. You can put an X there. Now this has to be something that's actually false that on your sheet. And so maybe you do something like this. Now you've just given everybody else a piece of information that they may or may not know already. And the idea is to try to give people information that they that they already know, so you're not giving them any new information. And you can do that by taking good notes of what other people are asking and other people are showing and things like that. So we do this. Now, because we've given an X and everyone else can now put this X on their own sheet, you're gonna get a discovery card. So you'll flip this up, and what this tells you is that you can look at a suspect and a location, but they always have to be in 2 different envelopes. Now that card was a little unfortunate because if we had gotten weapon, we could have looked at the final thing here and then something somewhere else. But I took the suspect in 4, which is Dame Obsidian, and the location in 3. Remember, they have to be in different ones. And so now we know that English Village and Dame Obsidian do not relate with each other because they're in different things, different envelopes. So we come down to Dame Obsidian and we come down to English Village and we put an X. And again, this is hidden behind your sheet. I'm using a pen here. Highly recommend using pencil in a game like this because you will be erasing at times. And so you're slowly trying to figure out your puzzle, but then as other people give you information, you're placing X's there as well. So let's say it's the next player's turn, and they come down here and they say, hey, Dame Obsidian is not with the Mystery Island. And so that allows us to say X here, which we know behind our shields means it has to be this, which means it can't be this. So we've already found out a lot more information here. Now the player that did that flips a card, and sometimes they'll be wild. This means in one single envelope, you can look at the suspect, the weapon, the location, or even the verdict, the black one, which is really important because again, you have to find the single black envelope to be able to find which is the actual right suspect, weapon, and location to win the game. Now sometimes you may want to, instead of showing someone an X on the board, you might want to show them a check mark. And so in this case, let's put that check mark where it was on one of the ones on our board. And then we would fill in, again, the rest like that. That's obvious. Anything that you can see. So anything you can see on the board that can be deduced only with what you can see on the board, you can place them here. Now, why would we do this? Well, if you place a check mark, you then get to pick any two folders and look at a single thing in there, in either of them, and you can even look at the black verdict card. Now, they must be two different colors in the card, so you can't look at like black verdict, but you can look at the verdict in one and something else in a different one. So what we looked at was the verdict of envelope 1, because I was pretty far on that one. It was innocent, so this one's not going to be the guilty one. Then I looked at the weapon here, because we already kind of knew two things in this one. We know Demon City and Draconia were together, so we looked at the big bag of cash here, and that was the weapon. And so what we were able to do is say, well, this is now, because it's these two, it also was the big bag of cash. And you can also now extrapolate that over here, because we know that Draconia and Dame Obsidian is together. And now we also know that that intersects with the same thing. Draconia, bag of cash, Dame Obsidian, Draconia. So everything always links. That's how sort of these logic puzzles work here. And so now we've got a lot more X's that we can sort of put when it's our turn and give up other information. So now after filling in some of the other obvious things that we know can't be there, let's say it comes back to our turn and we want to place another X. Now let's say we place it here, because we know that that's not true. Now there's something else you can do, is you can continue to be placing marks in spots on the board that are true only by looking out here. And so like we know that Draconia and Dame Obsidian are together, but we also know that it's not with the briefcase nuke. So we also know that it cannot be with Draconia, right? Because they don't match there. And so you can continue to place as many things on the board as you want that are true only by looking out here. And why would you want to do that? Well, because on the next player's turn, if you did not do that, they could easily just look at this board, deduce it, and go, well, yeah, this is clearly not true. And they don't have to give up any new information that nobody couldn't deduce from just the board. So it's sort of like hiding, giving people information that they should already know. So after you place an X or a check mark, and you can continue to fill in things that are obvious on the board, and that's part of the strategy of the game. And on your turn, if you think you know it, you basically say, I'm going to solve the puzzle. I think in 2, we're going to see it's guilty, and it's going to be Silverton with the spy satellite and the mystery island. You would secretly look at them. If you're right, you show them to everybody and you win. If you're wrong, you secretly put it back, flip it over, and say, I'm out of the game. First one to do it right is the winner. Okay, as I mentioned in the intro, as a kid, I used to do logic puzzles in bed all the time. And I still do them, actually, using the Murdle books. And so I really enjoy the series. I love the logic puzzle books. Those are obviously just sort of like solo challenges, different varying ways of difficulty. So obviously I'm going to be interested in this because deduction games are some of my favorite games. So let's talk about this as a game itself, and then how well it translates to those that already know the Murdle books. What I like about this game, it is a pure logic puzzle style deduction. Newer, more modern board games seem to do a lot of different things with logic and deduction. I tend to like the pure stuff the most because, again, I like the logic puzzle aspect, the grids and such. So this is very true. If you like the sort of spreadsheety logic puzzles in a game, that's what this is. It's just straight up pure logic deduction. I like that. I like that as streamlined mechanisms. On your turn, you're putting an X or you're putting a check mark. Based upon that, you will get some information or even more information if you give a check mark. And you can also do some deductions on the board to give yourself, make it a little harder for your opponents to not give you information you don't already know. Like it, very simple turns. And I like that it feels like the books. It really does. The same characters, the same places, and even the flavor text on the back matches the funny flavor text in the game, in the books. So I like that it does bring basically the books right over to a board game format that's multiplayer. And I do like that it plays 2 players. A lot of times it's really hard to get a deduction game to play 2 players well. Many of them don't even go to 2 players. This one does, and as you'll hear in just a moment, I think it's actually best with 2 players. So what did I not like about the game? Now, on the negative side of things, there's a few production issues here. Number one is, as I showed in the overview, to really deduce things back and forth and be looking, you need to be looking at your entire sheet. Because I want you to fold it to fit it behind the shield. it has to fold to fit behind the shield, and then you're constantly flipping the thing over. Oh, there's this, and flipping this over, and flipping this over, and flipping this over. It's dumb. They should have just made it on maybe a wider sheet, or made the shield fit so it goes long enough back so that you can actually have the shield fit. I think having it wider and then having it more of a landscape mode with that information and being able to have it cover it. I don't know why they did that. Probably to save money making it smaller, but it doesn't work well. I hate the shield. You need to have the thing up there in order to not need to be flipping your thing back and forth. The other production thing is I like the sort of the envelopes, the way things go in there and you have to sort of like pull them out with it facing you so you can see something. Sometimes they get really tight in there, especially if it's the one that's kind of all the way down at the bottom. You got to pull it up. I've seen, at least one of mine, the tabs get a little bit bent because someone's like trying to get the bottom one out and just by accident just gets bent. And so now one of my suspects has a little bend in it. And if that happens to be the first one in all the envelopes, even if it's face down, you could see which one has the bend and I know which person that is. That's unfortunate too, because in a deduction game, if you can tell something apart, it kind of breaks the games. So there's some production negatives. So all deduction games, well, most deduction games have a fundamental problem, which is if someone gives, by accident, a wrong piece of information, it sort of breaks the game. This one, possibly even more, has this problem because, again, a wrong answer that someone puts on the game board breaks the game for everyone. Now, you might say, well, why would you give a wrong answer? It's not that straightforward. Even if you're familiar with the books, you got to think about this a little differently. You look in two different envelopes. You see a weapon in one and a location in another. What that means is that those two things, you write them in on their envelopes, on your little sheet. But then that means those two things are not connected, and so you put an X into the interactions of those. Well, it's not that hard to possibly just put it in the wrong column by accident, or forget that that's exactly what that means. You won't do that after you've played it a bunch of times, but mistakes can still be made. And if you're putting something out on the board that you deem as like, hey, I saw this must be true, I put it there, it screws up deductions for everyone, because then, you'll start looking at the board and you go, wait a minute, that's not what I have. Did I do something wrong, or did they do something wrong? You don't know. I mean, you might have a good feeling of, maybe I leapt a little too far in my deductions. We had this happen in the most recent game. 3 of us knew the books, 1 player did not. The player that did not, by accident, put something in the wrong spot, and it screwed all of us up. Now, I had known at the time, like, something's not wrong, and this is why you play with erasers, folks. Pencils and erasers, which, by the way, don't come with the game. So the game is pretty fragile in that regards. If you're playing with people that know the books really well, and you're playing with less players, it's probably not going to happen as often, but it still can happen, and it does kind of ruin the experience. But that's a lot. There are some games recently, like Search for Planet X, that uses an app to give you the answer to know that you are not going to get a wrong answer. So newer games have figured out ways around this, which I really like. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But like most deduction games, you can break the game, and I've seen it happen. The game is very luck-based, heavily luck-based for victory. If you're looking to play this game because you like the books and you like to kind of experience that as a board game, and it's you're just going to have fun experiencing it, I think you'll enjoy it. If you go into this saying, I think the person who can deduce the best is going to win, not the case. I mean, clearly, you saw my overview. If the number 1 envelope happened to have just been, out of 25% chance being the one that was guilty, I was almost 2/3 of the way there on the first turn, right? So you can win this game on 2 turns if you happen to get the 3 things there and you find out it's the guilty one. So I don't know. It's very luck based. So don't go into this thinking it's going to be a deduction contest, because it's not. It's just have fun, enjoy the experience, but it's very lucky. So overall, who can I recommend this to? I think if you like the books and you're going to play it with people that know the books well, and they're going to have less chances of possibly messing up how the deductions work and stuff like that, I think I can recommend the game to you and say, I think you'll enjoy this. Again, going into the caveat knowing this isn't going to be a deduction contest. It's very heavily luck-based as well. For other people that want like a more pure, less luck-based deduction experience, this isn't one that I would recommend because of the issues I've said. If you are looking for something like that, there's a few recommendations I have for you. If you want one that plays 2 players, most games play 3 players in deduction, and probably the best, most classic one that uses a sort of a spreadsheety logic puzzle, sort of, is a game called Sleuth. It came out back in 1973, 73 or 71, one of those 2 years, I think 73. And it still holds up today. It's Sleuth. They just reprinted it. Eagle Griffin Games just reprinted this into a new version. I believe it still has Sleuth in the name, but has something added to it. That is the best, most pure deduction game out there. Also has a little bit of luck, but also is very strategy based as well. Very streamlined though. If you want to play with 2 players, there's, again, Search for Planet X is a great one. That's what I recommended earlier. That one uses an app to give you the answers so you can't mess up, and it plays really well with 2 players. It actually even plays well solo as well. That is one I would recommend. Or Chronologic, which is a very new game that came out where you're going to be tracking people around a building and such. It's really cool. Also, The Lost Code is a recent one that plays 2 players. So those are 3 recommendations if you're at 3 or more or 2 or more players. Those are ones I can recommend to people that maybe have tripped into this video or fell into it because they like Murdle. Again, if you're a big fan of the books, if you know what you're getting into, I think you'll still enjoy it. If you're not a fan of the books, there's plenty of other better choices out there. It's been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games, by helping you find the next one you love. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and their 4.5 Kickstarter introduced the new Galactic Minecraft and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. The campaign recently ended, but it's not too late to pledge late at GameToppersLLC.com.